Good morning and welcome to PWGC's Environmental Echo. I am Paul Boyce, the host of the podcast and CEO and President of PWGC. And today we have we always have great shows, but today I'm really excited to have our guest. We've got Matt Cohen from the Long Island Association. You know, it's been told to me it's sort of like the Chamber of Commerce for the entire island here, which is really good for many aspects, but especially for the business community here on Long Island. And again, our topics are generally environmentally focused, but we'll see where this goes with Matt today, right?
Yep, absolutely.
We're excited. So with that said, before we get into it, I just want to let our listeners know the best way to get a hold of us, if you guys have questions, comments, ideas, thoughts, future guest topics, whatever, is www.pwgrocer.com/podcast. That way you guys can just drop us a line or a note, and we'll get back to you in a reasonable and responsive manner. And joining Matt, we also have Charlie Bartha from our office, who is a senior vice president. He was associated with our engineering group, but he still is. But he's heads up our business development sector now. So we're glad to have Charlie with us as well. Before I get into that, let's give a little background on our main guest today, Matt. Welcome. Firstly, I know you guys are based out of Melville here in Long Island, and you're the region's largest business advocacy organization. As I said, sort of akin to a giant chamber of commerce for Nassau and Suffolk, as it's been explained to me, which is great. And since taking the reins of the LIA, Long Island Association, in May of 2021, so it's been a year now, you've been working tirelessly to address issues impacting Long Island's economy, and that's the economy and the environment, they go hand in hand at times. So we'll see how this plays out today. Some of the advocacy issues have been improving the environment, infrastructure, affordability, diversity, support of small businesses, and recovery from the pandemic, which you really stepped into it in May of last year. But prior to being named president of the LIA, Matt has served as its vice president of government affairs and communications for 10 years, and in that role, he was the chief lobbyist for the LIA. He has also had successful stints at the Long Island Power Authority, LIPA, and was Long Island director of the United States Senator Chuck Schumer, as we all know him. And Matt has worked as an aide in the Suffolk County Executive's office. So with that, a little bit of his educational background, and this I did not know this. Matt earned a Bachelor of Arts history with a concentration in American history from the University of Pennsylvania, and he got a JD from Hofstra. I didn't know you were a lawyer.
I even passed the bar.
Oh my gosh! And he was admitted to the bar of the state of New York.
It only took 7 times, but no, I'm just like my cousin Vinny.
July of 2012. So that's going on 10 years now. You've been a lawyer.
Yes.
A legit lawyer.
A legit lawyer.
All right.
Never practiced, but I have. I could if I needed to.
And real quick, you live in Comac with your wife Tracy and your son Jack, huh?
Yes.
How old's your son?
He's 11.
11. Well, 6th grade. If he's going to Comac public school or middle school next year, hopefully he gets the best math teacher in that school, Mrs. Boyce.
Mrs. Boyce.
My wife's a teacher there.
At Comac Middle School?
That's her.
I got to remember that. He's going in the 6th grade in the middle school next year.
If he's lucky, he's going to get Mrs. Boyce.
Very cool. Good.
Sounds like a special request.
Absolutely. Got to make that happen.
I'm making a plug. All right. And as I mentioned, we got Charlie Bartha again, who's been a frequent guest and sort of co-host on the show at times with me. And Charlie, thanks for joining us and to help talk about some of the topics we have on hand today. Welcome.
Of course, and it's a pleasure to be here with Matt. Since I know Matt for virtually his entire career.
I was going to say, this is such a treat. I didn't know I was doing it with Charlie, too. Yeah. My first job out of college was at the Suffolk County Executive's office, and I met Charlie when I was 22. We've stayed in touch ever since. He was a legend then, so he's even more of a legend now.
Not quite, but thank you.
All good stuff. So, guys, let's kick it off and give our listeners what they want to hear about the topic at hand with, sort of Long Island's future. And Matt, since you've took the reins at the LIA, what are some of the things you've learned? Some of the lessons you've learned?
It's a very different job. Used to being the guy behind the guy. I've always been, an aide to the county executive, an aide to Senator Schumer, Kevin Law's right-hand man at LIPA and the LIA, and now it's a different role. It's a more public role. All of a sudden, I'm the most popular kid at school. A lot of requests to speak, have meetings, etc. But it's been thrilling, and it's been challenging, but it's been exciting, and I think we're doing a lot of really great things.
That's great. I mean, we're glad to have you as a guest, but we're also glad to have you in that role now. You know,
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to a bright future for the island with the organization.
You certainly had great training grounds, and you weren't even in a training role, but Senator Schumer's office, County Executive Halpin's office, right?
Levy.
Oh. Okay, and the working 10 years with Kevin Law has got to be incredible.
I've had some great mentors, between the senator and now the majority leader and Kevin. I've been very fortunate to have two very good rabbis that I've learned a lot from, both different things, but very important things.
All good stuff.
Yeah.
So to really get into this, right away, what are the most prominent economic issues facing the Long Island region today, in your opinion?
Sure. And let me tell you, it relates to my vision for the LIA and what, we want to be a forward-looking organization, and we want to be tackling all the major issues facing the business community and our region as a whole. Let me back up a little bit. We're a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization, 501c6, which means we have a membership-based organization. So the strength of our organization really comes from our board of directors and our members like PW Grosser. That's how we're effective. That's how we're influential. So being nonpartisan, I don't care if it's a Democratic idea or a Republican idea. I just care if it's a good Long Island idea. That's how I try. That's my compass. And so the things that we've been focusing on now are, one, affordability. We've been talking about it forever, but to me, it's clearly the existential issue facing Long Island. Being able to make Long Island more affordable for young professionals to stay here, raise their families, more affordable for businesses to stay here and grow and create new jobs. We've got to expand our tax base. We're always going to be a high-cost region. We know that. So how do we address affordability issues? Well, there are a few things, right? Childcare. I was talking about childcare as an economic development issue before the pandemic, but the pandemic certainly showed how big an economic development issue it is, right? Broadband, right? It showed that we need more broadband and more affordable broadband because it even brought to light more of the digital divide between underserved communities and communities that have it. We talk about downtowns, and infrastructure improvements and transportation. We talk about housing, right? Housing's key. A lot of people don't want to be in their 20s, 30s, 40s, paying $3,000 for an apartment and not being able to save any money. We need more affordable housing. We need more affordable rental apartments. We need more multifamily housing. And we need to engender an environment where people have more home ownership opportunities. For the life of me, Paul, I don't know how anyone saves 40, 50, 60, 70 grand to put down for a down payment for a house here. And if they can't do that because they're paying $3,000 for an apartment, maybe $1,000 or $2,000 for childcare, depending on how many children you have, your student loan payment, then put on top of everything else, your car, your cell phone, etc. Affordability's key. I don't know if you want me to keep going with some of the issues, or
by all means, yeah.
Okay, I'm on a roll.
Leading into my next topics and questions,
So we talk a lot about affordability. I think I have not a unique, but I think this is my generation now. I just turned 40 last December, and I have I have several friends, I should say, that have moved to Georgia, South Carolina. These are places because they couldn't afford to live here, and they weren't making $100,000. Which may not even be enough for some people, weren't making $100,000 in their 20s, much less their 30s. So anyway, we also talk about small businesses. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy here. About 90% of all businesses, 100,000 businesses or so, are small businesses on Long Island. They went through hell and back again during the pandemic, right? And when you think about it, these are real people. The person that runs the stationery store, that's your neighbor. The employee at the drugstore, that's your brother or your sister or your friend. These are real people, and they really struggled. And for the ones that were able to keep their doors open, God bless them. And I really think we have an imperative to try to support them. So we got to continue trying to get them the government support they need, and also patronize their businesses, shop in your downtown. Make sure these small businesses are thriving and vibrant. So we talk a lot about that. I've been talking a lot about trying to foster a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive economy. I know a lot of folks are talking about DEI these days. I want to talk about it, but I also want to walk the walk. So every time I speak, I talk about this message to the business community because, not only is it the right thing to do, it's an economic imperative. And I could show you study after study, including one on Long Island that the Urban League of Long Island did, that shows that the more diverse, equitable, inclusive economy you have, the more diverse business you have, right from the shop floor to the C-suite, the better your business is going to be. The more you're going to grow, the more you're going to be successful. And the more successful one business is, the more successful we all are, because a rising tide lifts all boats. So I've been talking a lot about those three, and there's more, but I'll let you transition before
that was great. They all hit home with us, as fellow Long Islanders and part of the business community. But to start with, you mentioned the affordability, right?
Yep.
What are we doing? What's the solution? How do we make it so people don't have to flee the island and make things more affordable? I know property taxes are up. Mm-hmm. Cost of housing has gone way up, especially with the pandemic and everybody wanting to flee the cities, and people are cashing in on that. But where are you going to go? What are we doing?
Excuse me, before you jump into that, let me throw a couple other things out related to it. With respect to housing, and we're involved with a number of housing projects throughout Suffolk County, and to make them affordable is a very big challenge. Of course. There's a challenge from the community, whether they want to see that. A lot of communities don't even want to see rentals.
I know.
And Long Island continues to be way behind other regions as far as number of rental units.
And think about how far we've come from a couple of decades ago, and the way the community used to feel, and the number of rental apartments. We actually come a long way, and we still got a long way to go.
So how do we convince communities to accept this kind of housing, as well as how do we make housing itself more affordable?
Right, and I think people's attitudes are evolving, and it's been slow and incremental here, but I think that it's going to accelerate. And I think as millennials and Generation Z and keep growing up and keep being the ones that have these jobs here and buy these houses here and rent these apartments here, I think we're going to get more and more. And I think that people look at places like downtown Patchogue, downtown Farmingdale, and they see downtown Rockville Center, and they see these are vibrant communities that they're going to want their kids to live in, because at the end of the day, if you're older and you have kids, you want them to have the same opportunity to live here and grow here and have a job here and have their family here that you did if they want to live here. And in order to have them do that, they can either stay in your basement apartment or in your house, or you can help create an environment where they can afford an apartment. And back to your question, Paul, look, there's no silver bullet. I think if there were, we would have found it out long ago. But I think if I had to say number one, create good paying jobs. Because if you have someone that has a good paying job that's six figures or more or whatever it is, they're going to be able to afford things that maybe they can't afford now as a 25-year-old kid making $40,000, $60,000, whatever it is. So I think we got to create good paying jobs. And I think when I talked, childcare, for example, when I talked about that, it's got to be more affordable. It's got to be more accessible. When I had my son's 11, he was in childcare, many years ago at this point, but I was paying $1,000, a month. It was great. It's a lot of money. And I was fortunate to be able to afford it. A lot of people aren't. And then I'll let you go, and then because I have a couple other things I want to say, but I don't want to jump your questions.
No, we're absolutely thrilled to have you and learn all this stuff that you're able to share with us. But you also mentioned the diversity, equity, inclusion. As a business owner and manager of the firm, that is, it is the priority for us too. We've got to get the message out, and we've got to be more diverse. We're trying to encourage. We're an engineering firm, environmental firm, so we're trying to even go beyond just, the hiring phase, and start to encourage the younger folks to get into the field. Yep. So there's more of a pool that we can actually utilize and hire.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you having a difficult time finding the types of folks, no matter their race, gender, whatever? Are you having trouble finding folks to fill engineering jobs here?
Yes, we are. Okay. Absolutely. We've got open positions right now. It's not as difficult to find the entry-level junior folks coming right out of school, because there's always a crop every year, But once you start to need more senior people, say 5-10 years of experience or even higher, there's a real difficult problem with that right now.
I've been hearing that from a lot of companies I've been talking to. They all say the very similar things, and they say the pandemic has actually exacerbated that, because now people, being able to work remotely, people wanting to live in Iowa and get paid a New York salary but still work for a New York company. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are real challenges for the business community to grapple with and to figure out how to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we want to hire local and stuff, but we have had to go outside our geographic region here, and we've done some remote hirings even out of state. We have people now working for us.
And I know companies, I know one company in particular who told me they had, employee based on Long Island, didn't tell them, moved to Iowa, that's why I used that example, and was working for this Long Island company They were a New Yorker from Iowa.
They didn't even realize it.
No, and they were getting their New York salary. But it's a challenge for that company because you keep paying them the New York salary. Now, do you pay them an Iowa salary,
Exactly.
or do they leave then? It's messy.
Well, if we can certainly bill them out at the New York rate, there's no reason we shouldn't pay them at a New York salary for sure, no matter where they are.
I think you raised a really good approach with respect to the affordability to tackle it from the other end, to tackle it from have higher salaries for people, higher paying jobs. And
totally. And that's why we have to, New York doesn't have a great reputation in terms of their business climate. That's why we have to make sure that, especially at the LIA, I'll bring it back to us too, we have to be advocating in Albany, Washington, and locally for policies, regulations, laws that are going to improve the business climate and not scare more businesses away, because we all know it's very, I'm not going to say it's impossible. It's very difficult to conceive of the idea that we're going to lure a business from Texas or Georgia. They're probably not. We could try, but it's unlikely because it's so much cheaper to do business there. So what do we have to do? We need to encourage entrepreneurship and grow and incubate and grow companies here and develop them here and have them want to stay here. We just added Henry Schein to our board of directors. Henry Schein's the only Fortune 500 company headquartered on Long Island. There used to be others, but not anymore. But think about that company. They were born here, grew here, developed here, added jobs here, has become an international Fortune 500 company, and they've stayed here. We got to replicate that. We'll try to.
Yeah, we need more of it for sure. Yeah. So a little bit about the LIA then. Membership is made up, it's not individual membership, but it's like business membership, correct?
Yep. Yes, correct.
Can you give us a breakdown of your sort of the demographics then, if you will, of the membership of the LIA?
We run the gamut, really, from the smallest businesses, sole proprietorships, to the largest companies. We go from the sole proprietor to the Cannons, the Newsdays, the PSEGs, the Henry Scheins, right? These
big
employers
guys
that have thousands or several hundred of employees, and we do every sector. We represent the broader business community. We're not industry based. We're not geographically based, so we'll have all sorts of companies, and we try to represent them all as best we can. I'm trying to put more of a focus and emphasis on small businesses because I think, whether rightly or wrongly, the LIA has often been perceived as being more about the big businesses. That's not true, but I'm trying to put more of an emphasis on small businesses. So we actually, I'll plug it here, on June 16th, I think, we're having our first annual small business conference. It's going to be free for small businesses, and we're going to have...
What constitutes a small business to the LIA?
1 to 25.
Okay.
For purposes of
this.
And we are going to have some great speakers. We have the regional administrator for the SBA. We're going to have the president of the United States Black Chamber of Commerce.
Great.
So it's going to be a good program. We're doing a lot of programmatic things, too. And going back to you, Charlie, and I'll tie this to the environment, on Long Island, and talking about, creating good paying jobs. On Long Island, the environment is our economy, right? I mean, we don't look at those two, the environment and the economy, as being mutually exclusive. We could do both. We can maximize both. So, for example, we just had our first annual Evening of Honors on Tuesday night, which was an awards night. We gave out our Medal of Honor, which is our highest honor, to Ørsted and Eversource. Both are LIA board members. Ørsted is an international offshore wind developer. Eversource is a leading transmission company that's partnered with Ørsted to do offshore wind. They are in the process of building the first offshore wind farm in New York State, South Fork Wind, and it's right off the coast of Long Island. It's a big deal. We talk a lot about creating a clean energy economy and clean energy jobs. We're doing it. And, there's supply chain opportunities, for small businesses as well to get involved and be a part of this. The Haugland Group's a tier 1 supplier for Ørsted and Eversource, and they're going to establish 100 union jobs onshore for their onshore work of the project. They're doing another project at Sunrise called Sunrise Wind on Long Island. This is a big deal, and we have to capitalize on the fact that we're an island and we can do offshore wind. So we're doing a lot in that space. And, oh, by the way, it's good for the environment because we're combating climate change.
I just had this conversation yesterday, as a matter of fact, with someone, and I was mentioning, it was told to me, this isn't my thought, but the Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones, right? So, natural gas and fossil fuels, it's not going to end because we ran out of them.
Yep.
It's got to end because it's got to end. It's no longer we realize it could be contributing to some real detriment to the environment and the planet, and with carbon emissions and everything else. So people are trying to decarbonize, And you just brought up a great way of trying to get off that type of fuel for heating and electric and cooling and everything else. So
absolutely.
And at PWGC, we're right in the midst of that because geothermal heating and cooling is a big thing with us, and that's something that Paul is the expert on.
That's what that whole conversation yesterday was about, that decarbonization, getting off the fossil fuels and getting over to more solar and wind, and geothermal was the basis of the discussion. So yeah, that is near and dear to us.
Yeah.
And, that we will certainly try to promote and get people more interested in.
Geothermal, solar, battery storage, these are things that are happening, and we got to be at the forefront of it. And I think we can be, because we have these amazing research and academic institutions on Long Island. Not only are we known as having the best, or one of the best K through 12 education systems in the country, we have leading universities and colleges, but that have a lot of research components. We also have Brookhaven National Laboratory, a federal Department of Energy lab on Long Island. That's a big deal. Not every region, much less every state, has one.
That's right.
And we have it here on Long Island. It's about 2,000 plus jobs, and they're on the cutting edge of technological and scientific research. And in fact, the Department of Energy had to make a choice between BNL and a couple other labs to site its brand new electron ion collider. They chose Long Island. Yeah. That's a $2 billion investment here. It's a big deal. You look at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, where they discovered DNA, for Pete's sake. You have Northwell Health and the Feinstein Institutes. You have Hofstra University. You have Stony Brook University and everything they're doing there. I hope I'm not leaving anyone out. But we have this research corridor that really can help us be a high-tech economy and create these good-paying jobs. And when we talk about the environment being our economy, we talk about renewable energy, let's also talk about sewers. Did I read your mind?
Are you reading my script here?
Yes. I don't have it in front of me.
No, you're right. You're in sync with us. This is great. Let's go. That is a flavor that we really enjoy sinking our teeth into. Sewers, right, Charlie?
Absolutely.
I'm going to see if I can guess what's next after I do sewers. So the LIA has been advocating for the expansion of sewers for a long time. Obviously, it's certainly, I should say, it's more of an issue in Suffolk County than Nassau. Suffolk County is under-sewered in a big way. And that's, historical and geographical. But, sewers are high-tech sewer systems, and you see what the county executive below is trying to do with that. Clearly it's good for the environment, right, as opposed to having the cesspool, in your backyard or whatnot. So it's good for the environment, especially these systems they have now. But it's also good for economic growth. A lot of these downtowns can only grow if they have more sewers. So that's why, like in Kings Park and Smithtown and some of these places, we've been pushing for investments from the feds and the state in expanding the sewer network, because businesses need to hook up to this. Houses are going to need to hook up to this if you're doing affordable rental apartments. So it's another huge issue here on Long Island.
We could go on and on of the benefits that are behind sewers. You mentioned the growth in the economics But there's the environmental aspect too, as you mentioned. If it goes out to somebody's sanitary system in their front yard, we're putting all that nitrogen into the ground. Well, now we're no longer putting it into the ground, right? And there's still a lot in there that would have to dissipate over time. But we can't just put a Band-Aid on it. We got to treat the cause and the source.
And there are these systems out there which, with Steve and I assume LIA driving force behind it, along with Libby, that the county executive Steve Malone has gotten the health department to be a little more progressive and can consider these systems, because elsewhere in the country they've been used for years. And having spent most of my career in government, I understand it's a quantum leap to try something new. Mm-hmm. And it's happened over the last several years.
Well, one of the keys, though, is it's a balance, right, that we have to navigate, because, of course, it's a good objective, it's a good goal. We want these systems. They cost money. They cost a lot of money. And not every homeowner has $20,000 or whatever the number is to contribute to it. So we got to figure out a way to balance it and make sure that it's subsidized enough so that it's affordable for the homeowner.
Mm-hmm. Are there any areas of, say, Suffolk County that the LIA is most interested in seeing sewer as like a priority?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned, the Kings Park, Smithtown, St. James area is a big one. And there are other downtowns like that. I've been really focusing on that because you have a supervisor there, Ed Wertheim, who wants to do this, wants to grow. So there is one.
Former podcast guest as well.
Oh, yeah, good guy.
Yes, he absolutely. I agree.
So can I guess the next one?
Go ahead.
All right, or one of the next ones.
Mm-hmm.
So back to the theme of the environment is our economy.
Mm-hmm.
Our waterways are part of our economy. It's not just good to have clean water, clean drinking water, and clean water in the oceans and the bays and the rivers. it's important for our economy too. Is that on the list?
That was not on the list, but we'll add it.
All right, we'll add it.
Please.
Clean water, clean drinking water is, we're a sole source aquifer here. We're very fortunate. Clean drinking water is clearly important, but also think about the recreation economy and the fishing economy that's a result of our waterways and being on the Atlantic Ocean. And
oh yeah,
our fishing industry out here, although it's taken a hit over time, it's still vibrant out here. And go to Jones Beach, look at all that recreation, that's going on there. That's economic development, not just having a good time.
Well, as speaking to our podcast producer Tommy before the show here, I'm an avid surfer.
Okay, there you go.
So I love to spend as much time in the water as I can.
Yep.
Right, that's how I recreate and enjoy myself. One of the ways I do, anyhow. And clean water is imperative. Not only for the drinking, but for the fishing and surfing and swimming and boating and everything else we do as an island.
Totally. And think about it. You're buying your surfboard at someplace local, and that's going into that business, and that business person is using it for something on Long Island. You're going to wherever you're surfing. Let's say you're at Jones Beach. I don't know where there's good surf. I'm not a surfer. You go to Jones Beach, and then you're buying from the concession stand. You're paying the toll. You're doing this. You're doing that. It's all part of our economic development too. Plus, it's an attractant for people to come here, right? We're very blessed,
Absolutely.
right? Our beaches, our waterways, it's an attractant.
Tourism.
Right?
Yep.
Tourism. We have a multi-billion-dollar tourism economy. A lot of that's because of our waterways.
Well, yeah. South Shore beaches in the summer. I mean, it's a major attraction, and we got to treat it like that.
I've been told, because I'm from the North Shore. I grew up in Northport, and my wife is from the South Shore. She grew up in Merrick, and she is not very interested in going to North Shore beaches. She says only the South Shore has the real beaches.
I think Paul and I would agree with that.
I 100% agree with your wife. No knock on my North Shore friends and family, but
I said, listen, I don't mind stepping on rocks as I go into the water.
A lot fewer sharks up there too. Oh gosh! But one other topic that there's a couple topics, but one this is to the engineering industry on Long Island. This is a biggie. And I'm sure the LIA is well aware of this. That infrastructure bill that we've been hearing so much about. It's passed, and it's trillions of dollars are going to be spent on rebuilding roads, bridges, water, wastewater, telecommunications, airports, railways.
Mm-hmm.
Super, super important, not just to the region, but the entire country. What's the LIA's stance on the infrastructure bill?
Yeah, it's a game changer for Long Island and the state, really. We worked very closely with the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, who deserves the lion's share of the credit for bringing this money home. It's good to have the Senate Majority Leader be from your home state. And I'm very fortunate to have worked for him because, one of the things I learned or try to emulate from him is his work ethic. He's an animal, and he really cares. And the other thing, I'm digressing a little bit, but I'd mentioned earlier as being a mentor. One of the things I learned from Chuck is that he treats everybody with the same level of respect, whether, he can go to office building, from the janitor to the cafeteria worker to the landlord, he treats everyone the same. And he's still Senate Majority Leader. Big job in Washington a lot. Still visits each of the 62 counties in New York every year. And I keeps going to high school and college graduations.
Wow.
And I can guarantee you that if he's been to, let's say, the Baldwin High School graduation, I bet you if he goes back next year, he still remembers the principal's name. That's the kind of person he is.
I agree. I was at I live in Bayport, right, in South Shore, Long Island, in Suffolk County. And it was the St. Patty's Day parade a few years back.
Sure.
And there's Senator Chuck Schumer marching down Main Street.
Really?
I swear to you, I couldn't believe it. I was shocked and impressed.
I used to be. I eventually became his Long Island director, but when I was in high school, I interned for him in that Long Island office, and I was the one that used to have to hold the sign that says "Meet Chuck Schumer." It was very embarrassing. Do they still use those signs?
No.
Thank God for those
see
interns.
The parade. No, he was there waving and saying hello to everybody.
Maybe back then he wasn't as well known, so we had to hold the signs. Now he's everywhere.
But to have him in such a huge position, I think it was the day after Election Day. It was a meeting in our office, and we were talking about the implications of the election. And I said, no matter where people stand on issues, the fact that Chuck Schumer is going to be Senate Majority Leader is incredible for New York State and Long Island in particular, I think.
You're totally right. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, it's very good that Chuck Schumer is the Majority Leader. It's very good.
Yeah.
And just like state politics, when John Flanagan was the state Senate Majority Leader, that was good for Long Island, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. You know, it's a big deal when you have the leadership from New York or from Long Island. So anyway, back to your question.
Well, yeah. Are you guys advocating to, apply some of those dollars to any specific projects within the region?
Yeah, we worked closely with the majority leader. We worked closely with Suffolk County Executive Steve Malone, and at the time, former County Executive Laura Curran, and we developed a long list of projects, that touch on everything you talked about. Sewers, roads, bridges, broadband, water. So yes, I'll name some of the sexier ones. There's going to be money going to MacArthur Airport, and redeveloping the Ronkonkoma hub. That's another game-changing type project. You talk about, real big transformational projects on Long Island. What various folks are trying to do in Ronkonkoma is huge. They're trying to expand the airport and connect it to have sort of more connectivity to the railroad station in Ronkonkoma, which is one of the busiest, if not the busiest, I think, rail station on Long Island. Plus, they have a whole plan that they're working on to develop a mixed-use economic development. It's going to look like Long Island's downtown. They want to build a convention center there, which is good for business. Right now, if you're a business, the only convention center closest to us is the Javits Center.
Yep.
But we could attract a lot of businesses here for conferences and things like that if we had our own convention center.
How about the Oakdale merge?
That's a big one too. There's so many of them, right? The Oakdale merge is a big one, and I believe they just got money from the state to finish that too.
I think the governor put in money for the environmental study.
Okay, yeah. And speaking of the governor and the Oakdale merge, in the state budget that was recently approved, Long Island also got a pot of $350 million. There's not a lot of specifics, so we'll see where it goes. But we're working closely with the state Senate delegation, who's primarily responsible for that on our end, the county executives, the Regional Economic Development Council, to identify, again, with this pot of money, you don't want to put $100,000 there, $1 million here. You want to develop these transformational projects and put real money into it, because then they may actually happen. So we're going to be fighting for money for Ronkonkoma Hub for sure, out of the $350 million too. This is a good time for Long Island. Good time. We have challenges, but we have opportunities. These pots of money are a big opportunity. And if you think about it, this year, two of the largest infrastructure projects in the country, one of them I think is the largest, are coming online. They're going to be operational this year. East Side Access and the third track. And for those that don't know the term East Side Access, it's a Long Island Railroad train that goes into Grand Central. That's game-changing.
That's huge.
It's huge. It's for all the reasons you would think. Not only is it going to have enormous economic benefits, it's going to increase property values, and it's going to get you to work faster. It's a big deal. And it's been, again, in the works for decades. It's finally happening. Third track, we're going to be able to encourage more reverse commuting. We still have to get more people back on the trains because there's some, lull from the pandemic. But, it'll take time, and we'll get there, and we got to keep investing in our system. And we got to make it, again, more appealing for young professionals to stay here, more convenient, easier. And those two projects are, part of that.
All right. Well, we're getting close to the end, but there are a couple. One thing I definitely want to talk about, a little bit energy, like electric vehicles and alternative, transportation modes. What's the LIA's stance on stuff like that? What are you guys doing to encourage that, or is it on your radar? What are you guys doing?
Yeah, I like to think of us as a very forward-thinking business organization. That's not just about, anti-tax or anti-this. I want to be for something, right? A lot of times business organizations are playing a lot of defense and they're against something. I want to be for things. And to us, again, renewable energy and EVs and things like this are not just good for the environment, which is important for our economy, clearly. They are going to be economic engines. We need to be doing more on EV. I think we're doing a really good job on solar here. We're clearly being a leader in offshore wind. Now let's be a leader on electric vehicles. Let's do more. I'm in a parking lot that I share with Leviton. They have their own EV charging stations there.
Oh, wow, it's great.
We got to do more of that. We got to get more businesses and more parking lots to use their parking lots for EV charging stations, and we have to bring down the price point, have through incentives or whatever else it's going to be. We have to keep encouraging car manufacturers to make these types of cars. And, much like no one was thinking there was going to be a windmill out in the Atlantic Ocean 2 or 3 decades ago, and now it's going to be kind of commonplace, I think, in time. I think in time, everyone's going to be driving an electric vehicle.
I think, I'm looking at some manufacturers like Land Rover, Range Rover. A few years they're going to be full electric, like Volvo, places like that. It's just you're not going to have a choice.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
And it's the infrastructure to keep those cars going. I can give you, for instance, like my dad. He's in a condo down in Florida. They have a garage under the building. They're now thinking of bringing in charging stations. They're not going to have one at each spot for everyone, but perhaps the next condos we start building with garages with spots. Yeah. They will have them, So it's just
it's one of those things, Paul. What year are we in? 2022.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say 10 years ago, no one could have conceived of an iPhone. I don't know when the first one came out, or whatever it was. And now you can't live without it.
100%.
Then maybe that'll be the way it is with EVs.
Well, we'll see. Time will tell, but I think we're certainly headed that way. As I mentioned, that decarbonization. Whatever's happening to the climate, and things like that, global warming still, I see it. I've said it on other podcasts, ocean levels, they are rising, I told you, I spend a lot of time out there, I've seen the tides getting higher and higher up on the beach and, more and more erosion.
Yeah, and it's scary.
It's going on, whether you believe it or not. I've seen it.
And yeah, absolutely. And, storms like Sandy and others, they don't just happen by accident. 100-year storms are happening a lot more frequently. And let's be selfless here and think about our kids and our grand. I mean, we may not have to deal with it on a catastrophic level, but our kids and our grandkids may, and we want them to be able to have the life that we had.
For sure. Charlie, anything you want to add?
No, I'm good. And I think there's so many things we can talk to Matt about. We should have
we should have a follow-up podcast.
Sure,
I do.
Sure.
I know you're short on time, but Matt, anything we didn't cover that you want to mention before we sign off for our listeners?
I would just say, PWGC is a member of the LIA, and we appreciate that. And I bring it up because, again, the LIA is a business organization. We do advocacy. We have networking opportunities. We have events where our members can hear from important speakers. But it's companies like yours and the work you're doing, Paul, and the work you're doing, Charlie, that make the LIA's role possible. We're only as strong as our members. You guys are doing a great job. I've known PWGC for a long time. I'll name drop Nick Anastasi, who I also worked with a long time ago. It's a good group. You're doing great things. And I want to help be in the position to make your company more successful from my end as much as I can, help create an environment here where you can add jobs, find those engineers, and grow and expand here, and not say, we got to set up shop, or we got to close up shop or go somewhere else.
Well, we appreciate that, Matt, and we're a proud member, and I like being able to, have a place where I can meet and collaborate with my fellow Long Island businesses and, try to help further the economy and get things done here on the island. So we appreciate the work you're doing, too.
Thanks, Paul.
Keep it up. So that's it. Thank you, our listeners, for listening again. This is the Environmental Echo. I am Paul Boyce, the CEO and President of PWGC. Again, our guest today was Matt Cohen with the Long Island Association, and my sidekick over here, Charlie Bartha, who's also a PWGC member. Lastly, if you guys, just to reiterate, if you need to get a hold of us, www.pwggrosser.com/podcast. Again, I want to thank you for listening, and we're signing off at another really interesting podcast. Thank you.